All right, I'm back. This is a continuation of the execution exercise. We were discussing the 6 elements that are needed for effective execution, being alignment, priority, consequence, deadlines, scope of work, and the team. And I was very curious to see what feedback we actually had from you, if you had a chance to take a look, of what order you consider the most important, to say the least important, or what priority would you essentially give each of these items within your particular framework for execution. So I wanted to actually share mine, and I wanted to share the reasons for it. And again, I always love the feedback, so if there's something with the order that I actually had that you would disagree with, again, that's why we're kind of having the exchange to figure out, what's optimal, what's the best. So when I consider execution, the first, I think one of the most important things is to make sure that the important tasks actually make it to you, and the tasks that may not be so important never even get to you in the first place. And the way you actually do that is with a filter. So just as with email, you have a filter. When you get some of those emails that come in that are not relevant to you, they're not even addressed to you, and it's a lot of noise, your email provider most likely will put them into the junk mail folder, right? And that's actually really important because you only have so much attention during the day. So you want to focus on the most important things that come through. Now, when you consider each of the 6 criteria, the 6 items for having an effective execution strategy, I believe the same rules need to apply. And so for that very reason, the very first item that I would have within the list would be team. And the reason for that is the team should receive tasks first before it even gets to you. If it's something that they can handle and they can address quickly, that saves your time. And I consider that one to be one of the most important elements for anyone. Doesn't matter what role, what capacity, whatever you're in. You should not be dealing with the noise. You should have some type of filter so that whatever comes to you, you can then take the rest of the framework into effect and figure out where that should actually fall. So team, number one. Second, I have alignment. So with alignment, it essentially indicates what comes to me, whatever comes to me fits with my goals, right? So for whatever comes in, and my team's looking to filter the stuff that doesn't fall in alignment, right? So most of that stuff that comes through, my goal is for that to be aligned with what my goals actually are. And I would consider that a big number 2, because if there's something that doesn't align with your goals, you want to outsource that anyway. So if something's making it through the filter and it's not in alignment with you, you want to get a stronger filter, or you want to get another element on your team to essentially be able to address that specific gap. All right. Third is consequence. So if my team is not handled it and it aligns with my goals, should I switch my focus? Right? So what a consequence does, it's the pain point of if this does not get done, what will happen? Right? So if it makes it to you, it aligns with your goals, you have to figure out, okay, I need to understand what the consequence is for not getting it done. If it has a very high pain threshold, odds are it needs to move up in my list and it needs to get completed, whether by me or by someone that is going to be reliable enough to actually complete that. Fourth is the deadline. So for whatever comes in, it needs to have some type of deadline of does this actually need to get done by a certain time. If it doesn't, again, it's going to hit a back burner. But if it has a deadline that is short, that is close, and it has a high consequence, you better believe it needs to be moving up that list. So the deadline is very important. When does it need to be done? And then that way you can figure out, okay, where should it fall within the spectrum of everything that you're actually doing. Fifth, okay, is scope of work. This is what's actually required to get the task done. You want to have a clear understanding of what that will require. Otherwise, you'll be spinning your wheels working to get something done that does not have a scope of work or essentially capacity or grouping to say, this is when it's done. There's no finish line, right? So if there's no finish line and you're working on something, how do you know when it's done? And you need to be able to define that. If you can't define that, that's a problem. And the scope of work helps you define when something should be done. Now, last but not least, and this doesn't seem like it would come last, but again, you're going through everything to figure out what order things actually go in. The last piece is priority. Priority is where does it fall on your list of things to get done. Priority is incredibly important, and the reason it is at the bottom is because you want to take all of those other factors in to figure out what the priority should be. Once you take in the fact that it went through your team, it's aligned with you, you know the consequences, you know the deadline, and you know what's required to get it done, what order should you put it with all the other things you actually have to do, right? So if you get that right for execution, you will be flying, you will be rocking and rolling, okay? That's a huge piece. But I believe if there's a challenge that most people have, it's figuring out what team and what filters to put in place so that everything that comes in is in alignment and something you should focus on. And that's why that's number one. Your team is incredibly important. And if your team is very limited, such as if it's just you want to change that. And you can do that with technology, you can do that with other people, and you can do that with processes that maybe you're not familiar with yet, but they are game changers. So make sure you make the investment in your team so that you can execute on an incredibly high level. And once you get that execution strategy in place, man, there's nothing that can stop you. There's physically nothing that can stop you. So I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you learned something from this lesson. And again, I'm always chocked up with a lot more. So I hope you also stay in tune and subscribe to the channel if you actually enjoy. All right. Thanks.